Hi, my name is Samantha Arkin, and today I'm going to talk about habitat loss and its effects. So there are three types of habitat loss. The first one is habitat destruction, and that is the main reason that many animals are now on the endangered list, and it's also the leading cause of extinction in several species. When thinking of habitat destruction, the first thing that will come to most people's minds is of a bulldozer pushing down trees, but it can be done in several other ways. For instance, filling in wetlands, harvesting fossil fuels, dredging rivers, mowing fields. Deforestation, urbanization, and cutting down trees are all examples of it. And when something of this nature happens, the habitat can no longer support the species living there, which results in the displacement and or the destruction of its biodiversity. The second form of habitat loss is habitat fragmentation. Um, so this occurs when the remaining wildlife habitat is cut into fragments due to roads or development. And this will not only affect land species but also aquatic. So when dams and water diversions are put into place, the species of fish and other water-dwelling animals are divided and fragmented. It may not seem as bad as complete destruction of the habitat, but it still will create environmental chaos because those fragments of habitat are not large enough or connected enough to support the species living there. It'll make it difficult for those animals to be able to find mates or food, and it'll even make it hard for migratory species to find food or a place to rest along their journey. The last form of habitat loss is degradation. It can be caused by many things, but sadly it's mainly from human involvement. Like fragmentation, degradation doesn't completely destroy the habitat, but will ultimately result in its collapse. Some examples of degradation are pollution, invasive species, diminished resources, agricultural development, logging, mining, destructive fishing practices, and an altering of intensity and frequency of fires in an ecosystem. So while a degraded habitat could remain intact, the state of it would most likely leave it incapable of functioning properly and lead to species migrating or possibly even extinction. There are multiple causes of habitat loss. The first one is agriculture. Now, when agriculture comes to mind, the first thought would be of the benefits we receive from it, such as the food and the animals it provides or the medicinal plants it creates. However, even when something brings such great success, it will still have a downside. Now that farming is a massive business run by large companies, it requires more and more land to grow as many crops as possible that can be sold for a profit. This is resulting in a devastating loss of wildlife habitat as well as ecosystem functions such as water filtering across the country. So not only are they clearing more and more land to be converted into farms, they're also using a heavy amount of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. This runs off into our rivers and natural drinking water, making them unusable. It's also leading to an emergence of new parasites and a reemergence of previously thought to be under control parasites by creating conditions optimal for growth. The traditional take on farming is becoming more hazardous to our environment than expected, and it's leading to the loss of beneficial insects and plants, an increased susceptibility to flooding, the genetic erosion of crops and livestock species worldwide, a decrease in biodiversity, and it's also destroying natural habitats. The second cause of habitat loss is land and water conversion for development. This happens when a wildlife habitat is turned into housing developments, roads, strip malls, parking lots, industrial sites, etc. So when building a new site, whether it be a home or an office or a mall, the land will have to be leveled and cleared first. Now this takes away many homes and safe places for the animals living there. Kind of like our own homes, animals use their habitat to store extra food for bad weather or the off-season. They use it for shelter from storms and bad winds, and they'll also use it to protect their young when predators are around. So when bulldozers come in to level the place, it happens so suddenly that these animals don't have enough time to adapt or find other homes. A lot of them will die from the confusion, or they don't find a home in time and come back to find that their young have been eaten by predators. This will also happen in the water too, with the dams and other water diversions that siphon off and disconnect waters. This changes the hydrology and water chemistry, meaning basically that nutrients aren't able to flow downstream. For example, during the dry season, the Colorado River has little to no water in it by the time it reaches the Sea of Cortez due to these water developments. And the last cause of habitat loss is pollution and climate change, which are two big factors in it. Pollution can come in many forms: the air we breathe, the water we drink, the soil used to grow our food, the skies we see every day, and even the noises we hear. But one major form is methane gas pollution. It's even considered a climate superpollutant, as it has over 80 times the climate-altering potential as carbon dioxide, and it's also the second leading cause of climate change behind CO2. So human-caused climate change is accelerating at an alarming rate, and states along the eastern seaboard are already feeling the impacts. Climate change can contribute to sea level rise as well as higher ocean temperatures, which has already been linked to the increased intensity and frequency of hurricanes. So these communities along the eastern seaboard are dealing with erosion, saltwater intrusion, and floods along the coasts. And coasts are more important than just looking pretty during a sunset for a picture. They also provide habitats for wildlife like fish and waterfowl. They also help the economy by bringing tourists, and they act as a buffer against storms and the increasingly rising sea levels. As the global temperatures continue to increase, sea level rise is inevitable. This could lead to even more intense and damaging storms, loss of habitats, and possibly even extinction for some species. So the impact of habitat loss on wildlife is catastrophic. In 1986, it was found that 82% of endangered bird species were highly threatened by habitat loss. Some species are so affected by it that they can now only breed in a modified habitat. Endemic organisms are most affected by habitat destruction because these organisms are not found anywhere else in the world. This means that they will have less chance of recovering from being displaced. With habitat loss, extinction is more likely because the plants, animals, and organisms that once occupied that habitat now have a reduced carrying capacity, resulting in population decline. This also results in the reduction of genetic diversity, meaning that there's a higher possibility of mating with related organisms or different species, resulting in infertile young. One of the biggest examples of this is China's giant panda. Giant pandas were once found across the entire nation, but are now fragmented and in isolated regions in the southwest of the country due to deforestation in the 20th century. And not only is habitat loss affecting wildlife, but it's affecting us too. So some of the effects that habitat loss can have on us are increased chances of natural disasters. As brought up earlier, climate change can lead to a rising sea level, which will increase the chance of more damaging storms and weather. It can also increase the chance of floods and droughts, even crop failure and water contamination. A healthy ecosystem would change all of this because that helps to reduce the chances of these events from happening and will at the very least help to mitigate adverse impacts. One service that these ecosystems provide is becoming more realized as they're being destroyed, and that service is climate regulation. On a global scale, plants from around the world help to counter the accumulation of greenhouse gases by sequestering carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. However, this isn't the only ecosystem service that we lose when ecosystems are destroyed. We also lose their ability to recycle nutrients from sewage or agricultural runoff, their watershed management, oxygen production, pollination, nitrogen fixation, and waste management. The loss of healthy ecosystems has devastating results and can be felt worldwide. Poor people worldwide are affected most when these are destroyed because less natural habitat means less natural resources per capita. Wealthier people can afford to pay more for natural resources, whereas the poor cannot. So in conclusion, the impact of habitat loss is vast and devastating, but we can make a change. By raising awareness in your community, you can help to restore and rebuild destroyed habitats. Reach out to organizations such as the Habitat Restoration Sciences, Great Ecology Consulting Team, or National Wildlife Federation to see if there's anything else that can be done in your community to help combat habitat loss. Thanks for listening and good luck on your presentation.